And that's yet another DDG win.
Hey everybody, welcome to the DDG podcast. This is Ryan Kelly, owner and manager of Team DDG. We are joined today with Harry Shallcrass, Jake Gearhart, and Gabriel Smart. Two of the three here coming off a top 8 finish and regional win over in Brisbane. But for some of our newer viewers, I'll let everyone introduce themselves. Start off with Gabe, recently back from Down Under.
Yo, yeah. Hey, what's up? It's Gabriel Smart. And yeah, I was in Brisbane this previous weekend. Ended up getting top 8 with Gardevoir. That felt pretty good. Got 100 points from that, and then I'm going to Stuttgart this coming up week. So a pretty busy schedule to wrap up the year, and then San Antonio after that. So definitely a lot of stuff to get ready for, but feeling pretty good right now. So
Nice. Then Jake Gearhart.
Yeah, I'm Jake. Probably know me from Twitter. But yeah, I did not go to Brisbane, but I can take credit for one out of the 60 cards in the winning list.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. And then Harry, the big regional winner from Brisbane this past weekend. Congrats.
Uh, Hi, I'm Harry Shallcrass, sometimes known as a Packer or Packers. I obviously won Brisbane Regionals with 59 cards out of the winning list. So,
Why don't we start there? What's with the alpacas I guess fascination?
um,
there's
the
one
animal?
right.
Yeah, there's some posh ones up there.
Yeah, you got
Um,
quite a few.
no, they're just really cute and fluffy, and there's a lot of them on farms here in New Zealand, so you see them quite often.
Or you're not like a alpaca breeder or anything? Damn, that's not your
No,
day
no,
job.
I wished, I wished.
Nice. Well, like we said, we are a few days after the Brisbane Regional, but um Gabe brought home a top 8 finish with Gardevoir, and then Harry won the regional with Gardevoir. So gonna have some great insights on how the tournament went, how they went about choosing these decks, and what we're going to be looking at in terms of how the meta is going to kind of shape up as we have a couple more regionals before the end of the year. Stuttgart, Germany, and San Antonio, Texas are going to be coming up in the next couple of weeks. So let's get right into the tournament. Like, why don't Harry, kind of tell us maybe how your season had been going leading up to the tournament, and what kind of went into the choice of taking this particular list to the Brisbane Regional.
Yeah, so earlier in the season, I obviously first Australian regional, Oceania regional. I hadn't been to any major events yet, but obviously been going to cups. I've won 3 league cups with Gardevoir just towards list from Worlds. So it was like definitely my front runner going into like my first major event of the season. And
Nice.
league challenges as well. But
Nice. Okay, cool. I'll go ahead and splash up the list itself so we can take a look at it here. I can share your screen. So some notable things to point out here. First off, you just got 4 vaults, 3 of the refinement Curlia, 1 Rostep Curlia, couple Gardevoir EXs, couple Shiny Arcanas, a Screamtail, Celebrations Mew, and then just kind of the one of Tex, Radiant Greninja, Manaphy, and Jirachi. Why don't you just walk us through kind of the basic card selections here, and anything that might be, unique to this list that people should kind of pick out.
yeah, so going into the tournament, I right after LAIC, I was expecting like a significant amount of like Entei Valiant and Miraidon to be showing up, especially because it's like quite an easy deck to play. So I was expecting to play a ton of them in like early rounds. So the Jirachi over the Cresselia, which is one of the like interesting things about this list, is mostly due to like not expecting to play any mirrors. Like I don't think Cresselia is obviously really good into Gardevoir mirror, and one of my losses was to Gabe because I didn't have a Cresselia. But yeah, the Jirachi really helped. I think it won me 2 matches 2-0 against Entei Valiant in day 2, so that was really nice. Obviously, seeing the Control make top 8 at LAIC, I wanted to respect Control, so I have the Turos. But Palpad like feels really bad in Gardevoir when you have the 3 gusts with the 2 counter catcher. So I wasn't entirely sure how good my control matchup was going to be, but
Yeah,
it
before I
obviously
switch over
worked
to your
out in the
matchups,
end.
how many controls did you run into, or like the
I
Snorlax
hit
Stalls?
1 in top 8.
Okay, and obviously, yeah, obviously ran through it. So,
Yeah.
cool. Switch over to like Gabe's list here. Slightly different build with the Zacian V and Lumineon and Cresselia. What went into your deck selection here and these particular differences from Harry's list?
Yeah, so heading into the tournament, I had full intention to play DT Mew. I know that Miraidon and Entei Valiant just did exceptionally well at LAIC, which are 2 decks that Mew does, very, very good against. However, I was concerned about the top Australian players bringing Gardevoir, and from testing the day before, DT Mew, no matter what we did with the deck, was just not beating Gardevoir consistently. Gardevoir was a deck that I played the Portland Regionals and started 601 and then completely bombed out after that. I think getting like top 128. So I hadn't really played it much since then. I had a really sour taste in my mouth. So I decided to say screw it. And I sleeved up the deck. Didn't put really any games in with it. I think I've maybe played 1 or 2 games before the tournament. So I kind of just had to learn the deck on the fly because this is quite different than from the old one with like the Zacian with like Seal Stone and without I think back then like I was playing like Judge and stuff like that, so like it was a long time ago. But one of the big things that I knew is that I wanted to have an out versus everything, which is what I think that the non-VIP pass variant does have. You have a little bit extra space to add in things, like the Pow Pad. You can play Jirachi, Cresselia, and also Screamtail, which is really good in certain situations. I think it's really good in the Gardevoir mirror match having the Cresselia. And I just really felt like as long as I was able to set up, I had some type of answer. However, the non-VIP pass build, from what I learned, was much more susceptible to prizing Curlia, because with the VIP pass version, you can at least have an explosive start, getting 3 or 4, Ralts down and, kind of rely on your rare candies a little bit more, maybe the 2 refinement as opposed to 3, if you prized one. Whereas this version, oftentimes, if you prized, even like your Mirage Step, your deck just kind of fell apart. However, I got pretty fortunate in, like a lot of games where I wasn't prizing too many pieces. But yeah, just kind of in general, I wanted to have outs to everything, which is I think what this deck did. It's 1 card different from Kiaran Farah's list. Kiaran Farah and Jeremy Gibson both got top 4 and top 8, respectively, at LAIC. And I took their list and I cut the 3rd Fog Crystal, I think, for Jirachi. Because the Jirachi actually, I think, makes Entei Valiant slightly favored and also makes Urshifu very close as well, which were 2 decks that I was expecting to show up. And then I added in the 2nd Artisan as well, just because I wanted more path outs in the deck because of the expectance of DT Mew and like Miraidon to show up. So yeah, overall the deck worked out. Toro Palpad was fantastic. I played against 3 control. I went 2-1 against them. Got kind of unlucky and didn't play perfectly in my 1 loss, but versus the other 2, they were fantastic. So I feel like every card kind of pulled its weight. And I think it's a pretty good list, like moving forward. But I have been considering the VIP pass version again, just because the turn ones are really shaky with the non-VIP pass variant. I felt like I was falling behind a lot.
Nice. Yeah, and you go back to Harry, like for someone who may not have as much experience playing Gardevoir, what are some of the better matchups? What are some of the least, good matchups? And kind of how do your matchups go throughout the tournament as you're ranking through the various decks you play against with this?
Yeah, so basically every matchup that you can just go behind 2 prizes and then completely reverse with reversals on Gardevoir is going to be extremely favored for you. And the problem matchups are going to be stuff like Entei and Miraidon, where they can take multi-prize turns early and just run you off the board before you can do anything. But so obviously you just have to try and set up as much as possible in every matchup.
What about you, Gabe? Is it pretty much the same kind of matchup spread besides maybe that stall matchup with the additional Toro and Palpad?
Yeah, so I think you're probably slightly favored versus stall with Toro Palpad, maybe in a little bit more than slightly favored as long as you draw like decent. When it comes to Miraidon, that matchup pretty much comes down to if you can Mirage Step before they Iron Hands. If you Mirage Step and then they hand you, I feel like the game just ends and like you're just like super favored to win the game. However, if they Mirage Step, or if you Mirage Step after they hands and they hands down to 2, the matchup can admittedly become difficult. You actually do have a route that you can take in that matchup where after they hand you down to 2, you can go into EX and then counter catcher Mew and then Iono them and take 2 prizes and basically say, if you don't have boss, I have a shot to come back in the game. That's really your only route, but I would say that matchup is admittedly, pretty scary. I played against 2 Miraidon. Thankfully, they did not set up very well. They both, stumbled a little bit, and if Miraidon stumbles, on that first or second turn pretty much at all, and you just get the Mirage Step off, I feel like the game just ends, and you're just like super, far ahead. When it comes to Entei Valiant, I actually think you go second in that matchup. I think a lot of people are trying to go first, but that makes your deck incredibly vulnerable just to having a rough, turn 1 hand. And going second, it's pretty much impossible for them without a draw supporter to hit quad Valiant on, turn 1 onto something like Ralts. So as long as you can get down double Ralts and Jirachi, the matchup felt like relatively okay. And then Urshifu, I think, would be a little bit of a scary matchup as well. But, with the Jirachi, they can't use the Yoga Loop. So, I think that having the Zacian in that matchup is actually, like really nice. I think Zacian is, very good. I know that Harry didn't play it. You decided to go with the Cape, and I went with the Zacian. And the Zacian, I think, is a little bit better versus that matchup for sure. So, yeah.
I actually might
was-
Yeah, I might disagree with that and say that the cape is really good against Rapid Strike because if you just throw it on Manaphy, they can like never rapid flow you.
That's fair.
So you're like not really scared of Yoga Loops once your Jirachi goes down. But yeah, it's definitely like it's close. But they're both good, but you can't fit both Cape and Zacian.
Yeah.
I was like definitely considering like switching Cape to Zacian right before the event. But like when I switched from 10 Psychics to reversal to 9 Psychic through reversal, Zacian just gets so much worse because you're almost never going to be able to get all 9 energy down or have one prized. So Streamtail hitting 320 for 8 is like just good.
I was actually going to ask that. How often were you able to, or how often did you use the Screamtail with the cape for those big knockouts? Was that pretty consistent in attacker for you?
Yeah, well, against Charizard, Miraidon, and Entei Valiant, I used it a few times as a finisher. But the other thing it's really good at doing is after Miraidon like gets ahead against you, you can go counter catcher, tape the Streamtail, knock out a 2 prizes off the bench, and if they whiff, you just win the game, which is really good.
Yeah.
All right, so you got in the top 8, won the tournament, and then shouted out Jake here. Your winning tweet was won the Brisbane Regional Championship with Broken Gardevoir. Shout out to Jake Gearhart for the 3 reversal suggestion 10 minutes before deck list close. Yet again, Jake has snuck his way into a winning list. How'd this go down? What was the suggestion there, Jake?
Yeah, so I've been like with Gardevoir's ability lets you accelerate an infinite number of energies. So you never run out. So you always want to cut, in my philosophy, you always want to cut psychic energies, but you've never been able to before because you need 9 energy on a Zacian, and if one is prized, which is pretty likely to be one of your last prizes, then your Zacian just can't do 330. But in this list with no Zacian and no Cresselia either, you're less reliant on hitting like basic psychic energies early for those attackers. And what the triple reversal does is it's very good into the like problem matches for Gardevoir in this format, which are like the Entei Valiant, Miraidon, Chen Pao hands sometimes, and also Charizard when they're teching like vengeful punches and those types of things. Because if you can get like double reversal on Shiny Arcana Gardevoir, Iron Hands can't knock that out. And also Charizard with Vengeful Punch doesn't knock that out. And it's harder for Entei to knock out with just the Valiant pings because you have less damage on you. So it's really the power play of having double reversal on a Gardevoir, which doesn't have any damage on it. So if you get a reversal energy on attached on like a Ralts turn 1, and then you like evolve that Mirage Step, then you've got the reversal energy on the benched Curly, and that can always turn into the double reversal. And then you still have one left over if you need a one-hit KO against like Charizard. So you're like sacrificing a bit of odds and finding the basic psychic energies, but you're increasing your odds in finding those double reversal plays. So overall, in like the tough matchups for Gardevoir, I think the triple reversal is a lot better when you don't have Zacian that you need to play the 10 energies for.
How many salty opponents did you have when they realized you had 3 reversal energies?
Well, the thing is that most of them didn't actually realize there were 3.
I had no clue. I had no clue what I played.
They just got salty when I kept finding reversal energies every turn. Or like I've hit them like turn 2, or just I draw into another one on like turn 6. And they'd be like, oh damn, how do you keep drawing into those? And sometimes I'd have all 3 in my discard pile and they still would not realize that there were 3 of them. I think only one person actually realized that I had 3 reversal energies, and that was in top 4.
Well, finally some good game management, right? Because you get in the top 4. Jake, did you win your cup with the VIP list or the non-VIP?
It was the same as Harry's list.
So. Okay. I was gonna say I'll ask like what do we think the better list is, but it seems like I think the battle line is gonna be drawn pretty sharply there. Okay, cool. So you know, got through. What'd you play in top 4? Was it you played
Mew? I played against Mew.
Like a DT
Fusion
Mew?
Fusion.
Okay. And then beat the Mew, then beat what was the finals again? It was
Charizard.
It's Haru.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So how's it feel to take down your regional in Brisbane? How's it feel to be a regional championship now?
It was pretty surprising. Like I have never actually attended a regional before. I've only been to OCIC. So my goal was just a day 2. And obviously I exceeded that goal, but I just kept setting like, oh, I've made day 2. I want to get top 32. I want to get top 16. And then I obviously made it into top 8. And nice. It just kept going.
Does this mean we'll see you across the pond now at some of our American regionals? You can at least get to LA, right? You can.
Yeah.
That's not that far. Cool. Okay. Well, moving forward, you know, we've got Stuttgart coming up next weekend in San Antonio. Let's just stick with the Gardevoir theme. Like, what do y'all think? Any changes y'all would need to make to you know, to this deck to prepare for future tournaments, if any? And then also, you know, what do you think if we believe that Gardevoir is best deck in format, how do you think the meta is kind of going to shape out, like out of that?
I mean, for me, I think like all of these, like I'd stick with the VIP pass build. Like if we're just going with current Gardevoir builds, I think the VIP pass one is the strongest against the bad matchups like Miraidon and Entei Valiant. And those will continue to be popular. I think Miraidon was a little like Miraidon and Entei Valiant probably hit their peak last weekend. And Entei Valiant didn't do all that well. Miraidon also missed on like top 8s in both the tournaments. But I think those decks were a bit overplayed, but they'll go back down and settle to where they should be. One of the issues with like Miraidon specifically at Gdansk was that there were like so many bad matchups for Miraidon. Like Miraidon was so highly played in day one that all of the problem matchups for Miraidon had insane conversion rates going into day two. So you saw like Mew jump from like the combined like fourth place deck to number one in day two, combining DT and Fusion Mew, and then like Charizard wasn't far behind. So I think Gardevoir is always going to have trouble against Miraidon unless something crazy changes. And so I'd stick with the VIP pass, give yourself the best chance against that matchup. And then as Gardevoir like rebounds a bit, because I think it saw like somewhat low play last weekend just because of all the scare from Entei Valiant and Miraidon. Having the Cresselia in there again is probably worth it. You can like cut the Jirachi and go back up to 10 Psychic to fit in that Cresselia just to give yourself a better chance in the mirror. And then it's worse into Entei Valiant and Rapid Strike and Lost Box, but I think those decks will probably even out. And I wouldn't say Gardevoir is like the best deck in the format right now. I don't think we have a best deck. I think it just kind of depends on like the metagame of the day that you predict, and it'll fluctuate. It's one of those formats again where there's a couple decks that like vying for that top spot.
Yeah, I think that so I'm actually going to Stuttgart here. I think I'm the only one here that's going to Stuttgart. I will, if I do play Gardevoir, I can almost guarantee there will be VIP pass on my deck. I learned very quickly how shaky the non-VIP pass variant is versus things, like Iron Valiants, anything that just can attack early. I almost actually lost to a Roaring Moon deck, like just because they almost ran me over. This was like round two. So those are some, things I think actually as to why I'd play VIP. I am unsure on whether or not I want to keep Jirachi or not. I think Jirachi definitely seems like a strong card still to include. If I can fit in Jirachi and Cresselia, I will. I know that I believe Harry, you played you on the list, and I know that like Mysterious Tail is going in and out of lists as of right now, so that might be a cut for Cresselia as well. I know with VIP pass, Mew definitely gets significantly stronger though, so that would be an argument to keep it, but overall, I personally think Gardevoir is the best deck in the format. I just don't think a ton of top players showed up with it to Poland specifically. Like I know Tord, for example, who's like most like known for playing Gardevoir, decided to play Lost Zone. I know like the Scholes brothers, I think they played Charizard. So it seemed like a lot of like the top European players were choosing against Gardevoir for the tournament. And I do think Gardevoir, like, hypothetically, if it sets up, does beat everything, but that's always the question of whether or not like it can do that. So I would probably say that I think Gardevoir definitely remains very strong. I would say Entei Valiant has peaked. I agree with Jake. I don't see it unfortunately consistently topping events for the future. And I actually think a good showing of that was at Australia. Pretty much like the top Australian group, people like Kaiwan, Natalie Millar, and like that group of players. I think there were like 8 to 10 people on Entei Valiant from that group, and none of them made it into top 8, and only one of them made it into top 16, which I think is a pretty good showing of how good that deck might actually be. And the deck didn't do exceptionally well at Poland. I think there was one in top 16, maybe two. So I do think that deck has peaked. Miraidon I still think is probably a tier 1 deck as well. I expect that deck to do well, but I don't think like Entei is a deck that I would be personally terrified of like anymore. I think it kind of was a surprise deck. And I think as time goes on, people will kind of realize the flaws of it. And I think we'll kind of fall back down into maybe like tier 2 or just like a lower percentage of the meta game.
Nice. Yeah. My next question is going to be, is the Jirachi even necessary? And are we going to see the Lost Zone box binder dump deck get, picked up by a lot of people over the next several weeks as Tord's list kind of gets popular? Or is it only Tord that's going to be piloting this thing around?
I can't really tell how that Tord's binder drop list beats Gardevoir after playing it for a while on live. Like the Iron Hands is obviously something you can do, but Iono is just so strong.
Mm-hmm.
I think if they play Jirachi Manaphy, I don't think that deck can win. Like I actually played the matchup yesterday, and the matchup felt like I think I got literally two of my Curlia's Greninja because I didn't get Manaphy down, and I still won the game by just going like Manaphy, Jirachi, Iono, and then like I think I even like Miracle Force like at some point like when I knew that they were down, like most of their Mirage Gates and like Roaring Moon was like very unlikely to happen. And they just lost the game. So I think Lost Box will probably I think Lost Box will definitely steal games against a lot of Gardevoir players who don't play Jirachi. Because I do think the matchup is, probably 50-50-ish. If there is no Jirachi, maybe slightly favored for Lost Box, but if they play Jirachi, it's just bad. Like I don't see how they ever win. Uh
Yeah, with how popular Lost Box has been for the past year and a half, whatever it's been, like it's probably smart just to keep it in because that's people's comfort pick at this point. Like just um okay, one deck I really want to talk about, and I think we absolutely need to, since it won the corresponding regional over the weekend, was Snorlax Stall, won by Lucas. I'm not gonna try to pronounce his last name, but what is y'all's opinion on Snorlax Stall? Is it jumped into tier one now that it's won a regional, or is it kind of this is a fluke? What do y'all think?
I think people still like most people still don't know how to play against it and aren't bothered to test it. Maybe this past weekend's results will actually make people force people to test against this deck because I think Snorlax is probably like no higher than tier two. Might even be a little lower than that, I'd say. But yeah, I think like just people not knowing how to play against the deck, it's very easy to make a mistake if you've never played against a deck like that. And we've got so many like new players over the past couple of years into the game with how much bigger our tournaments are getting that they have never played against a deck like this before and don't if they're not testing against it, they're going to make mistakes that like it's a balancing act playing against Snorlax, whether or not you should go aggressive or be conservative with your resources. And just knowing like being close to that perfect line, like wherever the mark is, if you're close enough to it, like most decks are pretty even against Snorlax, maybe even slightly favorable. But if people are like completely missing the mark left and right, then Snorlax is gonna win games it has no business winning. But overall, the deck is like still solid. It's kind of like dissimilar to control decks from last year, like the Evil Tall deck, where they had like pretty like polarizing matchups, and like as long as you set up with that deck, like you were doing the same, you were getting the same results in most games. Whereas with this Snorlax deck, like a lot of it comes down to like, are you hitting your counter catchers at the right time, and your Misfortune Sisters, are they hitting? So it's more like even in terms of its matchups because it has that high roll potential and also the low roll potential.
Yeah, I would kind of say the Snorlax deck versus Gardevoir kind of reminds me of Lugia versus the Yveltal deck, where like Yveltal largely like popped up as like a way to check the Lugia, and then Lugia was able to add some text in and kind of naturally kind of figured out how to play the matchup, and Lugia started to actually have a pretty decent matchup against the Yveltal deck if you knew like how to Aqua Return or like you played like like the like Bird Keeper or stuff like that, to help out. And it kind of reminds me of Gardevoir versus Snorlax, where Gardevoir is arguably considered one of the best, if not like the best deck by the majority of the community, it seems like. And Snorlax, when it came out, was doing like really really good against Gardevoir, and now people figured out kind of how to play against it. They've learned how to use Collapse Stadium effectively, versus that matchup. They've learned how to use Professor Toro and stuff like that, and now that matchup I think is really close. I do think Snorlax is a pretty decent deck. It definitely takes advantage of players who don't know what they're doing. So I think especially like heading into San Antonio, there's going to be probably around 2000-ish, like masters. So there's got to be some people in that room that just have no idea, like what they're doing. Because the majority of players at tournaments are leaning more towards the casual end of playing. So, some of these people have not put time into practicing against control. And, like that's where, like control can, really start to shine, where it can, like pick up, easier wins, versus players who like might like make a mistake. Cause I played against 3 control and I lost to 1, and I even caught myself making a mistake in the game. I preemptively bossed something that I just should not have. And I was like, oh, I probably should not have done that. And that ended up like potentially like hurting me. But also understanding like when you should be going aggressive or like when you should just be like sitting there like doing almost nothing is important. Because like, for example, I had some times when I was playing Gardevoir where I would start Zacian and I just look at my hand and say, I'm not benching anything, I'm attached, and then just like roar the sword and just have literally like nothing on the field. And then there's some times where I was like, okay, I actually need to fill up my benching, kind of, start to get aggressive. So it's kind of I think like difficult to decipher exactly how you should be playing versus it, but if you play versus it, like moderately like fine, you should be able to beat it most of the time. I feel like unless you just have like no outs, to the deck, which like some decks don't. So yeah.
Yeah. Even in like the top table was at Brisbane during the last few rounds when the 2 control that are in the top 8 there were playing their win ins, I saw people like just choosing to concede their games against control while they still had win cons, which is obviously like they were welcome to do that, but they like just didn't know how to play the matchup. So it's definitely partly because people just like don't fully understand the deck. Like especially against something like Gardevoir, it's not Snorlax Stall will like occasionally cheese game 1 if you like open like Mysterious Tail Mew. So going in blind, like because the format is so turbo, occasionally you'll just completely catch someone off guard in game 1.
Yeah. They
Yeah,
get to be very quick to concede versus stall. Because like you can 2-0 them. It is possible to 2-0 them if you play fast enough, but finishing 3 full games is just like impossible. So I think if you're playing Gardevoir and you play Toro Papat and you start Mew, I'm probably just picking up my cards potentially. Or like if I start like Greninja and they like hit like a VIP pass and they have an explosive start, there's a real possibility that even though I could technically like win that game, it's not as for certain as like if I start like Zacian or Ralts or something like that. So being quick to concede, I think, is something that's really, really important, versus that deck specifically in the first game.
Yeah, like the number of techs you play in Gardevoir especially like changes a lot. Like there's the Turo, the Palpad, Collapse Stadium, but also the Luxurious Cape plus Lost Vacuum is maybe even like the most powerful if you happen to start Mysterious Tail Mew or Cresselia, or like Zacian in some cases. But because you can put the cape on something and then damage it enough to knock it out. And that usually gives you like, because that would also, if you time it like really early, like you start Mysterious Tail Mew and then your first your first out is Cape, knock out the Mew, then you can go even on prize cards and they'll usually miss if their hand is small, so you like time an Iono with the knockout on your Mew, they won't be able to use their counter catcher because they'll be even on prizes because they'll 5 prizes left, 5 cards in hand, and you'll be evening up. So you can steal like 2 turns with that play. So yeah, that combination is really good. Like when you're playing Mysterious Tail Mew and Cresselia, those types of things.
Yeah.
Cool. Alrighty. Last kind of deck I wanted to talk about made up almost half of the Gdansk top 8. Also took a couple in the top 8 of Brisbane, but Charizard EX. What are your all's thoughts on the current setup of Charizard, and what's the best kind of build that we got right now, in your all's opinion?
I think there's really been like a wrench thrown into everybody's conception of Charizard this past weekend because we saw like 3 different lists of Charizard doing well, like completely different. Actually, maybe even 4. But there's the classic Arvin Pidgeot build. And then there's Arvin Pidgeot without Arvin, 0 Arvin and Ionos, which I think Haru was playing with the Rotom V. And then Robin Schultz brought the Arvin Pidgeot with Rotom V. Then there's also that Colress, the quad Colress, triple vacuum, double vengeful punch Cramorant build in there. And then obviously the the evolution TM with Bibarel is another variant. So I think it's going to be a bit more scary to go up against Charizard because you will have like no idea which of the 4 or 5 versions they're playing from now. And that can change, like especially with like Gardevoir, your refinement targets and things like that. And like what you put in play. Like if you know they play Cramorant, then you'll probably want to put like Greninja in the active to try and soak a hit up. But you won't know if they just start a Charmander. So yeah, like each of the different variants has like slightly different things going for them in terms of like what they can hit, how much disruption they can do to you. So you never really know, which is a bit more scary and good for Charizard players. Because they can catch people off guard more now that you have to prepare for so much.
Yeah, I got my only Ralts turn 1 crammed by the Colress Cramorant build. I had lost game 1, and I didn't see all their deck, and I think I just started. I think I got like 1 Ralt on the bench on turn 1 going first, and I was like, okay, cool, I'll be fine. And then they went like Colress, Vacuum, Bench Cramorant, Escape Rope, and I'm just like, interesting. So I completely agree on the fact that it's really scary to go up against Zarda now because you genuinely have like no idea, and I feel like there's 3 or 4 different ways you can play the deck that is like legitimately like you can make an argument for the deck being tier like 1 or 1.5. Zard is still a really good deck. I think Zard has an answer to mostly everything. Its stall matchup is really shaky. Even also with the Minior, you can still lose to a competent stall player. But I think Zard almost goes into any matchup saying that I have some chance. Like there just are some decks that go versus, certain things where it's just like I can't beat that matchup, where Zard is kind of like, okay, there's at least an out, which is I guess another reason as to why I think you like Gardevoir is still like so good. Like both decks have ways, to kind of maneuver around, some of the more sketchy matchups, and just having 330 HP is, ridiculous. So I personally prefer the Pidgeot version. Right now I think it's a little bit more consistent. I actually played versus the top 4 list, and I stole a couple games. I stole game 2 in top 8 because their deck just started missing off the Bibarels, whereas if that was a Pidgeot, I probably would not have won, I feel like, just because like they missed like Candy Zard like 1 or 2 turns straight. And I got kind of bailed out in that game because I fell like super far behind. So I think that's my problem with the Bibarel engine, is that it just sometimes misses when you're ahead and you lose that lead, where Pidgeot's very good at holding leads, I feel like.
Yeah, the Pidgeot feels like way worse to have him play against Gardevoir though, because they can like
That's the
counter catch a
problem,
KO, yeah, keep up the 2 prize trade. But the same thing is true with like Rotom in Ho's list. Zard was actually my second choice going into Brisbane Regionals, but the problem that I had with it is that quite often, if your opponent knows how to play and knows when not to go ahead on prizes, a lot of your matchups get a lot closer to 50-50, like even into like Miraidon, like Entei Valiant, stuff that like should be like favored for Zard because they just like take one, you go knockout, just trade 330 HP Pokemon. If they just like don't aggressively take the first prize, you're in like so much more trouble.
So would y'all even play the Minior at all, or just kind of take your chances going into it? Might be a little bit more reasonable to use it in Stuttgart since we had so many successful Snorlax finishes, but what do y'all think?
Yeah, I think like generally as any deck like gets a lot of placements in one weekend for like their first time in the formats, they usually the deck will peak in popularity the next week. So we've seen like Entei Valiant and Miraidon's peak last weekend, and we'll probably see Snorlax's peak this upcoming weekend. So if I was playing Charizard, I'd seriously consider the Minior. But you don't just want like Minior, you probably need like Turo in there as well. Obviously, like Minior plus Penny will give you like a guaranteed matchup because you can pick up the Minior and all the energy on it. But if you're playing the Pidgeot version, you can play Minior, Pidgeot and Turo. Then you can play Minior and then get like your super odds in your hand with the Pidgeot, so that you can Turo and then double super rod all the energy back. And then you're doing pretty good in that matchup. I like Turo and Charizard anyway because like it improves your mirror a lot, and definitely the Snorlax matchup. And it can come up a lot in random situations, like against Entei Valiant. Just healing some damage off can be really good. So I'd probably play the Turo, and I'd definitely consider the Minior as well.
Yeah, I would probably play mini. Like if I play Charizard, there will probably be a Minior in my deck. I've actually considered Tool Jammer as well. Because you can Arven for Nest Ball for the Minior and then also Tool Jammer, and Tool Jammer turns off the Bravery Charm, which is, really, really good because then the Minior can actually one shot. But it's also really good against Urshifu because it turns off TM, I think, too. Which is, really nice as well. So like if you hit them with like an Iono, like Tool Jammer Zard and then just smack. Sometimes like Urshifu can kind of fall apart because they can't do that. The problem is that the like Charizard Pidgeot is incredibly limited on space. I feel like there's not a whole lot of flex spots, so I don't think you can play like Tool Jammer, Minior, and Toro. So and then like also like fitting in now like Jirachi as well. Like I've had a very difficult time like figuring out a Zard list that I feel like has an out to like the things like pretty much everything. Like I feel like you have to take one sketchier matchup. So maybe that's where like the Jirachi just now gets cut from Charizard, like in favor of something like Toro. But I do think that you should go into, the event with, something like Minior when you're playing Miraidon. I'd probably recommend playing 4 switch cards instead of, 3 or 2. I know like there are some like Miraidon lists that have a little bit thinner switch lines. Playing an extra switch card doesn't really hurt your deck pretty much in any way. And it also just helps out in that matchup. If I'm playing Gardevoir, I would probably play Toro for sure. Palpad's a question mark, but I think what's going to happen is actually pretty similar to Entei, where Snorlax's popularity will rise, but its success rate will drop substantially. And that's pretty much exactly like that's actually what happens with like a lot of decks is that like a deck will do like super well at a tournament and shock a lot of people, and then a bunch of people bring the deck and the deck underperforms. So I would be very surprised to see Snorlax see a ton of success at this next tournament, but I do expect it to be a very respectively large portion. Like I'd probably say like 7 to like 9%, which is a lot, for a control deck. Maybe like 5 or 6%, but like that's a lot, for a control deck for sure. So I think that I personally wouldn't play control to this event. I think control is a better play for San Antonio because if it does bad in Stuttgart, people will stop teching for it, and then it becomes good for San Antonio, like potentially. But yeah, its playability rate will definitely go up substantially, I think.
I'm not sure if like Charizard is like a good play for Stuttgart, considering we just saw like Gardevoir and Control do really well at the 2 regionals. But like if you're gonna run it, you definitely want like you want your punches, you want your Minior, you want your Turo. Just make sure that like those matchups are winnable.
Excellent. Okay. Well, I think that about wraps it up for today. Really appreciate y'all joining us tonight or Saturday afternoon in Harry's case, out in New Zealand. Any closing thoughts on where this format's heading over the next couple weeks?
I mean, I'm still like undecided on how much I enjoy this format, but it's like there's been about as much surprises as I've expected. They haven't all been bad surprises, so I'll say that. I think there's still probably decks out there that like haven't been found yet, or just like improvements to existing archetypes that haven't been found. Like all these different Charizard variants popping up this past weekend because the format's changed. And I could see that the same thing happening to other decks as well. And especially towards like Lost Box pile thing. We probably haven't seen the best Lost Box variant yet, or like Lost Box's peak in the format hasn't happened yet. So I'll be looking out for that, and any other surprises. I'm sure they're out there. We'll see who can find them.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same room where I wouldn't say I love the format, but I don't really have any like major issues with it. I haven't really sat down versus a deck and been like, oh, this is unfair. I feel like I haven't really found a meta deck where I'm like, okay, this should just not exist. As of right now, I do think there have been some nice surprises. Things like people realizing that Rapid Strike Urshifu is actually a really strong deck. I think that was, one of the surprises because at the beginning of the format, like no one was touching Rapid Strike Urshifu. But now, people are recognizing, oh, this deck actually has like a lot of decent matchups. So now, the deck's starting to see play. I thought that Entei Valiant was, like a pretty like nice surprise as well because that was a deck that saw a tiny bit of play online, but like people were kind of just like writing it off as kind of a meme. But now it's actually like a pretty strong deck. And then, like there have been like some disappointments and stuff like that. Like I'm a Goldango fan. I think that card is really cool, but that card hasn't been doing well. But like that's obviously like the trade-off, of having so many new decks. Some perform better than people expect, and some perform significantly worse. So I think the format's fine as of right now. And I think that's for people that are just going to San Antonio and not Stuttgart. Pay close attention to what happens at Stuttgart. See exactly where those meta trends are going. Things like PokeStats Live, like Limitless are great, resources to see, some of those results. And hopefully they get all the results in as quickly as possible for people going to San Antonio, because there's a short turnaround after Stuttgart, with San Antonio being that next week. So,
All right.
Yes.
Yeah. Anything else?
Yes. So this format's like fairly fun actually. Like obviously some people were predicting like Gardevoir would be dead, but it obviously worked out pretty well. Most of the decks in this format like feel kind of bad to play, but when all the decks feel like bad to play, most of them are generally pretty equal.
Yeah, this is a pretty fun format. It's wide open. You definitely are getting bored, with the options to play. So, all right, awesome. Well, thank you all so much. I'll let you all go around and just kind of, if you want to shout out your socials or coaching or sponsors, whatever you want to do. Harry, let you go first.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at _alpacas.
Nice. All right.
Yeah, you can also follow me on Twitter at Jake Gearhart. Yeah, that's where I post everything. So
yeah, you can follow me at smart_TCG or smarttcg on all my socials. I will be in Stuttgart and San Antonio, so if you see me, feel free to say hi. And yeah, shout out my coaching. Link will be in the description. I'm pretty full up until San Antonio. There might be some spots available, but after that, if you're getting ready for Portland or Charlotte or any of the upcoming, tournaments, then feel free to message me. But yeah, no, thanks for having me here. And shout out to Jar Gaming.
All right, awesome. And huge shout out to our exclusive sleeve and deck box sponsor, Procyon Gaming. Our last podcast was with the owner of that company. Currently, they're out of product right now, but they'll get a new shipment in the new year. And we've got a just case full of their sleeves back here that we'll be bringing down to San Antonio. So we'll have some product for our players to hand out throughout the tournament. And then go check out cuttertap.com. Of our Team GG players are writing over there. We've got a bunch of articles out right now over Warren Moon, Charizard, Gardevoir, Snorlax. We'll have several more coming out as we approach San Antonio. And of course, go check out Dead Draw Gaming. I'm in Black Friday shipping hell right now. I've got about 100 more orders to go from Black Friday. But yeah, so congrats again, Harry. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for you. And congrats, Gabe. Good luck in Germany. But other than that, we will catch you all next time. Thank you.